Okay, I think we have already a good amount of people joining. As I already said also, for Tony's question, we're going to be sharing the recording anyway. So hopefully for the people that are joining later, they will be able to catch up with the start of this conversation. So welcome everyone. Thank you very much for joining. I'm very excited about this workshop today because we're going to be talking about one of my favorite models from revenue architecture. And before I get into the nitty-gritty of this conversation, let me introduce myself. So I'm David Gordillo, but you can call me DG. Sometimes it's easy to remember and even to pronounce. I'm a growth revenue architect at Winning by Design. And that means that I help VC and PE-backed companies architect their go-to-market strategies and revenue growth. I'm also an angel investor, and I have been a tech founder a couple of times as well. And today, as I said, we're going to be talking about something that is close to my heart. I really like this model because once the first time that I heard about it, it really clicked in my mind how logical it is, but also how useful it is for us to be able to structure a go-to-market strategy. Yes, of course, Sonny, let me just share the link directly in the chat as well. Good. So today we're going to be talking about how to evaluate your go-to-market motions to optimize your revenue efficiency. It's a mouthful for sure. So I'm going to try to break down this question into different parts to try to give you the information. And hopefully you will be able to take home very actionable insights that you can start using tomorrow. And with that effect, let's just start by level setting. I just want to know from everyone in this call, what do you understand by a go-to-market motion? Whenever you hear this go-to-market motion, what does it make you think of? What is the definition that you have about a go-to-market motion? So please go to the chat, let us know what it is for you, a go-to-market motion. Anyone would like to share what they think a go-to-market motion is? Okay, so Shay's growth plays. What are the key steps each department takes focus on growth? Perfect. Joao, strategy to deliver product to market. Fantastic. Anyone else would like to share what you think a go-to-market motion is? Strategies at align revenue strategy across sales marketing. Yes, very good, David. Also, Deidre, it used to refer just to bringing a new product to market, but now it refers to the entire revenue generating function. Fantastic. I love that one. Terry, commercial operating model. Excellent. So I see there's some alignment and also some discrepancies, so let's say differences between what a go-to-market motion is. So let's just allow me to give you my definition. So historically, go-to-market organizations normally are made up three main departments. We have the marketing department, we have sales, and we have customer success. Obviously, these departments have more people within them. You can have performance marketing, you can have product marketing. In sales, you can have sales development. In customer success, you can have account managers, and so on and so forth. Traditionally, these departments normally are aligned in very independent ways of operating, meaning that marketing has their own processes, their own systems, their own tools, their own ways of measuring success with KPIs. Similar for sales and similar for customer success. The challenge with this approach is that normally the interactions between departments tend to be very limited and through interfaces, meaning that there's a lot of miscommunication and there's a lot of breaking points throughout the customer experience. The classic example of this as a consumer or as a buyer is when you're talking to one person or one department, that person says, okay, you need to talk to my colleague. You go and talk to the colleague, and the colleague asks exactly the same questions that you already answered 5 minutes ago or last week. It's a very broken system in which different departments are not communicating with each other. So the idea of a go-to-market motion is to break those interfaces and align the different departments of a go-to-market organization that are going to service, in particular, one ICP, in particular, an ideal customer profile. So the idea is to break those interfaces or break the silos and align from end to end how marketing, sales, and customer success are going to interact with a particular ICP or a particular ideal customer profile. This is already a mind shift in the way we normally operate, because as I said, historically has been very ingrained in different companies to operate like this, in which all the departments are different, they have their own boss and their own KPIs. Whenever we're making this shift, we need to start thinking about the customer, and we need to start thinking about what is the experience, the customer experience that we're going to provide to this customer from the moment we're raising awareness, from the moment we are retaining and expanding them as well. Now, if we're going to align these three departments, we also need to know what the expectations are from our customers when they want to interact with us. Normally, those expectations are driven by the amount of revenue that we're going to generate per customer. Or said otherwise, these expectations are normally driven by how much we're asking our customers to pay us per year. An analogy that I like to use at this point to understand what I'm trying to say is, let's imagine you have a pain, and the pain is that you need to spend one night away from home. And to solve that pain, you have two possible solutions. You have one, which is you can spend the night in a 5-star hotel, or another solution, which is you can spend the night in a hostel. So obviously, in a 5-star hotel, you already have the expectation that you will need to pay a sizable amount of money. So your expectations are going to be connected to what you expect this 5-star hotel to service you. You will expect a white glove service from the moment you enter through the door up until the moment you go up to your room, and everything in between. In contrast, if you go to a hostel, given that you're going to pay less, you're probably willing to overlook a little bit more on the details, meaning that you probably are willing to share your room with more people. You're probably willing to not have white glove service from the staff. And it doesn't mean that it's a bad service. It could be a top-notch service from a hostel, but given that you're going to pay less, you're going to be expecting a different kind of service. This is exactly the same as when we are asking our customers to pay a certain amount for our products. So in order to create the model, let's start by depicting on a horizontal axis different ranges of annual contract values. The annual contract values that we have on the screen tend to be directional. They are only an indication because they can vary by region, they can vary by industry, they can have different, let's say, amounts. However, these mental thresholds tend to be aligned with the customer expectations. And when I say a mental threshold, you can think about the marketing technique that has been so popular in the last few decades, which is when you see a product that is being sold by $9.99 instead of $10, or by $99 instead of $100, what marketers are trying to do is trying to avoid that threshold in which if you see that price, you're going to expect a different kind of quality from that product. So very similar here, whenever we're saying 5,000, 15,000, 50,000, and $500,000, those normally tends to be the mental thresholds in your customers when they will expect a different kind of service. Now, if we pair this with a vertical axis that is going to tell us the number of customers that we need to serve per year, you would probably conclude fairly quickly that there's a correlation between the ACV that we're charging and how many customers we need to serve per year in order to generate a certain amount of revenue. For instance, if we are selling a product that is $50 a year, to get to 5 million in revenue, we will need 100,000 customers. In contrast, if our product is $500,000 a year, we will only need 10 customers per year to achieve 5 million in revenue. Another relationship in this model is that the lower the ACV, the fastest the sales cycle tends to be, meaning that when we are getting closer to zero, it tends to be transactional sales. But if we go above 50 and so on and so forth, this tends to be more enterprise sales as well. So longer sales cycles, more complex, more people involved as well. Good. So as I said, a go-to-market motion is going to tell us how we're going to structure our marketing, sales, and customer success teams to be aligned with the customer expectations. So let's break it down. Let's break down these different customer expectations on how they want to interact with marketing, sales, and customer success based on ACV. Let's start with sales. So at the top, I put the different sales motions that probably all of you are very familiar with, and they are aligned already with the different ACV ranges. So for instance, in the range from 0 to 5,000, we have the self-serve. In this case, the product is selling itself. There's no human beings from the seller side involved in this sales motion. And as we go towards the right, we're going to involve more and more human beings. For instance, in what we call the one-stage sales motion, we normally have inside sales reps that manage end-to-end the full sales cycle. In the two-stage, and this one got very popular in the last decade, we have a pairing between SDRs and AEs. After that, we get into field sales. This is when we tend to have sales managers that work in about 50 or a few dozens of accounts or companies. And normally they are paired with a solutions architect or a sales engineer. And then when we get to named accounts, that's when we have a strategic account manager. They tend to manage a handful of accounts, and these accounts themselves have dozens of people as well involved on the seller side. So now that we match the different sales motions to the different ranges, we can also, ACV ranges, we can also match them to the different number of customers that we need to serve per year. Obviously, self-serve, if you want to get to 100 million in revenue or above, you will need to serve hundreds of thousands of customers. And as we move towards the right, we're going to have two main changes. The first one is that the cost is going to increase because starting in one stage, we are involving human beings into the mix, and human beings tend to be very expensive in any go-to-market organization. But also the deals tend to be more complex, meaning that more people from the buy side tend to be involved as well in the decision-making process. And also the sales motion starts to slow down because more people are involved. For instance, in the field sales, you tend to have legal teams that are involved, procurement teams that are involved, and those teams tend to be very, very slow. And then we get into the named accounts, in which we are servicing just a few or a handful of accounts per year with a very complex sales motion and a lot of people involved. So just to keep in mind, whenever we are moving from left to right, we are increasing significantly the amount of money that we need to invest in those sales motions. For instance, whenever we are moving from one stage to stage, normally that is costing about 5 times more because we're including SDRs already. Sometimes we have sales engineers as well that are doing the demos and so on and so forth. So rule of thumb, whenever you're moving from the left to the right, each jump between sales motions will cost you between 2 to 5 times more to execute. That's why also we normally need to compensate with a higher quota. And also we normally need to hire more specialized people as we go towards the right, meaning that whenever you are running a name accounts team, you will need to have very senior people that are not only able to have strategic relationships with the client, but also being able to orchestrate a lot of different people from the seller side. I'm going to pause there just to check in on everyone if you have any questions. By the way, I have Ian and Sari as well, my colleagues in the chat, just checking if there's any questions at this point. All good, all clear? All this is very intuitive, which is what I said at the beginning. Once you start seeing it, it starts to click as well in your minds. Okay, let's talk about marketing. So for now, we spoke about the sales motions. Now let's pair them with the marketing motions. So in terms of marketing, we normally have 4 main marketing motions. So we have inbound, we have outbound, target or targeted, targeting accounts, and network. Inbound in itself, you can make the case that inbound is applicable throughout the full spectrum of annual contract value, because you can always generate inbounds that are coming to you, raising their hand, saying, I want to talk to a salesperson, I want to see a demo, I want to have a proof of concept. However, whenever we are thinking about marketing motions in the lower range of ACVs, that's when inbound becomes the exclusive source of leads. Why? Because if we're saying that sales in self-serve doesn't have any human beings involved, it doesn't make any sense to have a human being prospecting to these customers. That's why when we're doing self-serve and even inbound, one stage sales motion, we can only do it inbound, because we should not be expecting a person that is managing an end-to-end sales process to also do prospecting. Why? Because remember, we are handling tens of thousands of customers or prospects at this stage. So it will be very, very hard for them to manage that. But then as we move towards the left, then we have the outbounding. So outbounding normally is very well paired with 2 stages. Remember that 2 stages mean that we have SDRs in the mix. So SDRs, or sometimes called BDRs as well, are the ones that are in charge of prospecting. And then when we get to field sales, normally we pair that with a marketing motion that is called targeting. And at this point, you might be thinking, what's the difference between prospecting and targeting? Like for you, it might be sounding as the same thing. And you might be right. There's a small nuance, small difference between both. When we're doing outbounding prospecting, we're reaching out to a large amount of accounts with a few people of a few contacts per account. Whereas whenever we're doing a targeted marketing, or also account-based marketing, which is the same thing in this go-to-market motion, we normally have a list of very well-known accounts, and we are reaching out to a larger number of people within those accounts. So in a way, when we're doing outbound and prospecting, we are more spraying and praying, but a bit more, let's say, strategic. But when we're doing account-based marketing or targeting, we are only targeting a very well-known list of accounts. That's the main difference between the two. And this doesn't take away that you could have BDRs and SDRs doing this as well. But that's the difference between having SDRs that are operating in this range and having SDRs that are operating in this range. Also, as I mentioned before, when we're talking about field sales or anything towards the right, it means that you will need to have BDRs and SDRs that are more senior, meaning people that are able to hold a conversation with C-level people in the buy side. And finally, we have in the named accounts is paired normally with a marketing motion that is called networking, meaning that marketing in this case is enabling as much as possible the different people, not only the salespeople, but everyone that is involved in the sales process, to be able to network and create connections and relationships with the key people in the named accounts. Remember that named accounts tend to be just a handful of accounts per a strategic account manager. You probably have not heard of a few of these sales and marketing motions in the way they are called right now, but you probably have heard of PLG, for instance, which is aligned with self-serve. You might have heard of inside sales, which is normally aligned with 1 stage and 2 stage. And you might have heard of enterprise sales, which is normally aligned with field sales and named accounts. So very important to keep in mind when we say inside sales. This means that even if you have account executives, you're not necessarily expecting to have them go and see your prospects face to face. You could, but it should not be the core of the strategy. Normally, the face-to-face meetings start in the field sales motion, meaning that's when you are going to fly out your account executives, your sales engineers. They're going to not only have meetings face-to-face, but also they're going to have probably lunches or dinners, trying to create that relationship. And even more so when we're talking about named accounts and networking as well. Good. I see a few comments. I don't know if there's any questions so far, Ian and Sari, that I will need to address at this point.
Not that I am seeing. Yes, mostly just, yeah, great comments. But if you
Fantastic.
have questions,
Thank you, Ian.
drop them in the chat.
Good. So let's move on to customer success. Customer success has also 5 different motions, customer success motions, and they are also aligned with the different ranges on ACV. On the smallest range from 0 to 5,000, we have the customer success motion that we usually call the community or the everyone to everyone. You probably are very familiar with this without knowing, but forums tend to be a typical example of this customer success motion, meaning that other users are helping other users answer their own questions, their own challenges, and also helping themselves use the product in a better way. Then we get between 5 and 15,000, the one to everyone, meaning that this is you as the company having a help desk that has all the documentation, all the information that your customers need to be successful at using your product. Normally in this customer success motion, you still don't have CSMs, customer success managers, but you have a group of people that are in charge of the help desk. Now, once we get to one-to-many, this is the first customer success motion that actually has human beings already being assigned accounts. In this case, when we say one-to-many, meaning that the customer success managers are going to be managing by volume, and the amount of touches that they have per year is very limited. They are, in general, just checking in that the usage is well or is as expected. Sometimes you might have health scoring as well that is informing these customer success managers to take action, and then also in the renewal or in the expansion moments as well. Then we get into the one to few, meaning one customer success manager or account manager for few accounts. In general, we tend to assign these accounts by segment, but sometimes by other metric that you use to slice your customer base. And finally, we get by account, which is a one-to-one, sorry. Sometimes it's even few to one. When the accounts are huge and you have different locations as well, you might have a customer success manager for the UK location, another one for the North American location, and another one for APAC location as well. And as you probably can infer already, we can map these back to the different amounts or the different marketing and sales motions as well. So now if we connect the dots, at the top, we can call these different go-to-market motions in a way that is addressing or is inferring how many touches we need or interactions your customers are expecting to have with you. So just to actually to connect the dots as well with what we were saying from the beginning, these 3 rows are already giving you the idea on how you need to structure your full go-to-market organization to create a go-to-market motion. So what we were saying here at the beginning, breaking the silos and connecting marketing, sales, and customer success, it is depicted in this particular slide in a vertical way. So for instance, a no-touch go-to-market motion, meaning that there's no interactions from this buyer side with human beings on the buyer side. We tend to have self-serve sales, inbound marketing, and community customer success. If we go to the other spectrum or the other side of the spectrum, which is dedicated touch, when we are expected to have a lot of interactions, human interactions with our customers, then we have named accounts, networking and marketing, and by accounts and customer success. This hopefully already is giving you an idea on how you could start structuring your teams when you're going to market. In particular, starting with the account annual contract value that you have in your organization. Good. Before I move to how these go-to-market motions actually look in real life, because one thing is how ideally they look, I just want to check with you first if if you are already operating like this, or if you have already thought about something like this, and if you haven't, or if you have had any challenges trying to deploy it in your organization. In the meantime, I see that there's a question from Hyatt. How do you mitigate the customer risk in this model? Hyatt, would you like to expand on what you mean by customer risk, please? In the
Yes.
meantime, yes.
Hello. Yeah, thank you. Yes, so Hayat Naji from Autodesk. I'm in charge of retention programs. So yeah, I think we are working, on this type of model. And I think what is hard for us is today we have a team, the renewal team, that are really working or focusing on customer at risk. So through the health score and so on, we are able, I think, to target that. So I was just wondering, so how you, I think, how you position these kind of customers there.
Yes, thank you for that, Najee. So depending on how you're going to market in your customer success organizations, which is the lowest row, you're going to have different expectations from your customer on how they're going to interact with you. This includes the ones that are at risk, meaning that let's say you are in a no-touch go-to-market motion, and you should have different metrics to know if these customers are using the product as you're expecting. But if you start having human beings that are reaching out to these customers to try to save them, you're already starting to kill your margins in that go-to-market motion. Meaning that you should have a way that the usage of the product is raising a flag. A human being can get involved, but not necessarily to reach out directly to those customers, but just to understand trends. Why? Because also in this case, you are dealing with hundreds of thousands of customers. So in this case, churn tends to be more normal and it tends to be higher than in dedicated touch. But with that churn also comes a lot of information and a lot of data you can leverage. Now, if we go to a dedicated touch with customers at risk, that's when a lot of people get involved. You fly out the account managers, strategic account managers to talk to the right people. For instance, the account can be a risk because our main point of contact left the company. So when we are operating in a good customer success motion by accounts, means that you not only have one main point of contact, you should have at least 3 or 5 to mitigate those kind of risks as well. So short answer, Najid, is first, we need to be able to measure the usage or know if the customers are using the product as expected, or at least they're getting the impact as expected. And depending on where you are in your go-to-market motion, you will need to take different actions as well. Thank you for that question, by the way. Okay, Andy, I see why inbound doesn't really work for high touch and dedicated, even for lead gen perspective. It does, it actually does. So that's why we have this dotted line in high touch and dedicated touch. However, when we get into what we call the, what do we have? Enterprise sales, which is, yeah. When we go to enterprise sales, the differences between inbound and prospecting start to blur. For instance, when I was saying targeting or also account-based marketing, when you do accounts-based marketing, it is a collective effort, meaning that because you are reaching out to a number of accounts that are already well known, and you're only focusing your efforts in those accounts can be generated through inbound, they can be generated through prospection, they could be generated through events. So it's not that it doesn't work, it's just that it becomes very blurred with the other activities that we're doing as well. Perfect. And then let me go back to the other question. Patrick, shouldn't CS be also organized by customer potential? Some smaller customers may have big potential and require more support. Excellent point, Patrick. And I'm going to touch upon that in a minute as well. But it's an excellent question. I'm very happy that you're asking it, because that's the great segue for how do go-to-market motions actually look in real life. So the first thing, and this is probably the most common one whenever I'm addressing or I'm interacting with clients, and we're trying to help them organize the go-to-market strategy and the go-to-market motions. We call it the everything, everywhere, all at once. This tends to be very common because it is formed organically. So whenever you have a company that has been operating for more than 7-10 years. You have had a lot of different C-level people or VP of sales or VP of customer success or VP of marketing. And normally when they're hired, they bring their own way of operating. So for instance, this is real data, by the way. This is for a client that I was working with. With this client, they had an ideal customer profile that was paying 120K a year for the product. But the marketing team was operating in a targeting strategy, meaning account-based marketing. But they were also doing prospecting, and at the same time, they were heavily investing in inbound. That's the first challenge. Then sales, they had field salespeople that were being flown out to meet these clients, but also they had SDRs and AEs that were selling insights in an inside sales motion. And also they had AEs, account executives that were selling, managing the full sales cycle. And just to put the extra cherry on top, the customer success team was only a help desk. They didn't have human beings dedicated to these accounts. So needless to say, very hard for us to calculate fast the cost of serving, the cost of acquisition, because it was all over the place, but also very hard for us to project on how to grow these accounts or how to continue growing the revenue for this client, because everyone was very unfocused. They were not operating at a very straightforward level, and it was very hard for us to optimize it, to design processes for them to operate. So just out of curiosity, because this is one of the most common ones that we see, I just want to see show of hands if you have had ever encountered this in your career, meaning a company that has all over the place go-to-market motions in marketing, sales, and customer success. Just by show of hands. Hand raised. Okay, Chase, thank you for that. Tony as well. Yeah, Morgan as well. Yes, this is very, very common. And it's one of the ones that is probably the easiest one to address once you know the go-to-market model as well. Now, second one is companies that have several go-to-market motions because they are addressing several ICPs, meaning several ideal customer profiles. This in itself is not bad. It's actually a very good thing to do. However, the challenge comes when you do this too early. Every go-to-market motion, as we said previously, is going to cost you budget, is going to cost you money. So if you do this segmentation too early, you are going to run into problems on scaling up those go-to-market motions. So our recommendation at Winning by Design is that up until 10 million in recurring revenue, you should have only one. And that one go-to-market motion should be servicing hopefully only one ICP as well. Just think about it. If you have one go-to-market motion with one ICP, you're not asking your teams to shift gears constantly. So you're avoiding this everything everywhere all at once, because you're not asking your account executives to sometimes prospect, sometimes target, sometimes handle inbounds. Then you have SDRs that are also doing prospecting. So it's very hard as a human being to start shifting gears all the time in selling to different clients that have different needs, different use cases, and different impacts as well. However, once you start getting more and more revenue, then you can start specializing your teams, and that's when you can get several go-to-market motions. So normally up to 50 million revenue, you can have 3. And then when you get to 100 million revenue, that's when you can start thinking about a new market or a completely new ICP that is going to start from 0 as well. So again, having several go-to-market motions is not bad. It's just the timing. If you have enough budget, or if for instance, maybe you can compensate this by raising an outrageously amount of money from VCs, that can work as well. But if you are building a sustainable company, it's better to have these thresholds also into account. Now, this one is very common with companies that are very good at raising prices. So some companies raise their pricing every year, sometimes even every quarter. The challenge or the hidden problem when they are doing this very successfully is that they start to see 2 trends. The first one is that the amount of customers that they are acquiring per year starts to decrease as they go up in ACV, which in itself is not a problem as long as it is clear for everyone in the management team that you're going to be acquiring less amount of logos, but at a higher ACV. The second trend is that once they increase the price by a lot compared to the initial point, they might get very well into the next go-to-market motion, meaning that at one point, the expectations of the customers are going to change. You're going to overpass some thresholds of approvals. Maybe more people need to get involved. You might get the CFO getting involved. You might get a buying committee as well getting involved. But sometimes, given that you just increasing price, you don't realize that is happening. So keep that in mind. If you're changing prices relatively often, which is a good practice as well, just keep in mind that sometimes you might get into the next range of ACV in your go-to-market motions as well. And now, this is connecting with Patrick's question, and that's why I was very happy to see it, because another case in particular for companies that are very good at landing and expanding, you have also another challenge that is hidden. For instance, and this is also real data from another client that I was working with. This client was very good at landing and expanding. So they were landing in the first year with an ACV of 40K, but after 3 years, they were able to expand to generate a lifetime value of 400K, which is amazing in itself. But this is also telling us that the way they were structuring their go-to-market organization was not aligned with the real expectations of your customers when you are expanding them at such a high rate. So in this case, we recommend them to do 2 things. The first one is that for sales and for marketing, they could have a targeted list of accounts. They can involve more skilled people as well, like sales engineers and solutions architects in the acquisition side. And then in this case, and the reason why they came to us is because CSMs were overwhelmed with the amount of accounts that they were handling. Meaning, even though they were being very successful at expanding them, the CSMs started to get to a breaking point in which they were managing too many accounts, because the CSM go-to-market motion was expected to be a high volume, so one to many instead of one to few, which is the real ACV in this client in particular. So I hope, Patrick, this answers your question as well. Let me know if it doesn't. But indeed, sometimes the landing ACV is not necessarily the ACV that is indicating to us how we should be structuring our go-to-market motions. Good. Before I get to different trends in the last 5 years that we have seen in these thresholds, the mentioned thresholds, I see there's a question from Joao. Yes, that's a very, very good question, Joao. And in this case, we are talking about direct sales, meaning that we are managing directly the sales, marketing, and customer success organizations. For partnerships, there is a different distribution. I don't have this slide for that, but it is in the book, and you can go to our website as well. You can find it there, in which we have a slide that specifies the different type of partnerships and how they fit in the go-to-market motions as well. Because not every partner is made the same. Some partners are referrals, so they only help in marketing. Some partners are integrators, so sometimes they help in the onboarding phase, sorry. Sometimes they're resellers, so they are aligned in the sales process. So we have that online, Joao, if you want to check it out. But indeed, in this case, we're talking about teams that you're managing directly. Good. Any other questions before I get into the trends on the ACV ranges? In terms of, I don't know if you have any questions regarding the different use cases, different challenges, if it's clear for everyone. Andy, there's a question for Sari. I think she can share some information towards the end of this session as well. I do believe this is a second edition coming, but I don't have the last word on that. Okay, let's move to trends as well. So obviously, as I preempted at the beginning, I said these ranges are mental threshold. As I said as well, the example that I use at this point is, for instance, marketers in the consumer industry, they play with the 9.99 instead of 10 or 99 instead of 100, because once we get into the next range, or let's say double digits or triple digits, something shifts in our minds and we think it's too expensive, or we're expecting a different quality of the product. Given that it's a mental threshold, these can be influenced by macro and microeconomic circumstances. And obviously, as probably everyone in this call can very much remember what happened in the last few years, we had a global pandemic, and that changed a lot of things in our industry. In particular, sorry, it should be in this one. In particular, for let's say the lower range of ACVs, two things happened. First, given that suddenly everyone needed to be online, everyone was using SaaS tools, everyone also started to get very comfortable or more comfortable paying larger amounts of money without talking to a human being, meaning that the no touch started to push up a bit and trying to push the low touch as well. Having that effect, the low touch also pushed up, and it started to compress the medium touch go-to-market motion. And this, you can take it more as, let's say, a floating threshold. I could tell you now the actual threshold is 10K. It could be less, but it's just for you to have an idea that if you want to push this threshold, in particular, if you're doing no touch, it's completely fine. You can experiment, you can play with it. Now, the other thing that also happened, in particular after the pandemic, was that we got into a market downturn. This meant that we were poor on cash, and companies started to cut costs as well. So that meant that the high touch threshold started to push down as well. This is, for instance, for the ones that were selling medium touch, you maybe have experienced this already, but this is when the CFO started to get involved in lower thresholds of ACV, meaning that before we needed an approval from the CFO at 100,000 for a product. They got started to get involved when we were selling a product of 50,000 or 75,000. So high touch started to push down as well. And also, given that we were not necessarily seeing people face to face, or not having that many interactions face to face, high touch also pushed up as well, meaning that for named accounts, the amount of interactions that we needed decreased, in particular because we were still in lockdown, or people were not that comfortable meeting each other face to face. So those are the trends, just for you to see it again. So no touch started pushing up, meaning that low touch also pushed up. And then from the other side, high touch started pushing down and pushing up as well, because of the amount of interactions that we were having. Good. So you might be wondering, okay, this is great. The original question that we started with is how to evaluate your go-to-market motions. That's checked. You already should know how to evaluate your go-to-market motions. Now, having that information, how can we optimize our revenue efficiency? So I'm going to get into that. First, by doing or by applying the go-to-market model, the first thing that you could notice, other than aligning your teams with the expectations of the customers, is that reporting on costs gets very, very much simplified, because you can have a P&L go-to-market motion, and each go-to-market motion can have, given that they have their own P&L, they can have very accurate reporting on cost per acquisition, cost to serve, and even you can break that down into cost per lead generation, lead development, selling, order processing costs as well, onboarding, retention, and expansion. So by having that breakdown of costs per go-to-market motion, you're not only going to have a very accurate cost per acquisition, you're also going to have a very accurate cost to serve, and as a result, you're going to have a very accurate margin as well. And by having that kind of information, then you can play with your margins and start being more sustainable in your organization as well. So that's the first thing in terms of revenue efficiency. The second one, and I mentioned this already a few times, but it's always good to remember, the more human beings you get involved in a go-to-market motion, the more expensive it is to run it. And the relationship is not linear whenever we are moving from the left to the right. Why? I already mentioned a few of these reasons, but we need more skilled people, so they tend to be more expensive, so more senior. We need more people as well, because from the buyer side, there's going to be more people interacting with us as well, and bigger number of people. So in reality, the more we go into medium, high, and dedicated touch, the first year costs tend to increase exponentially. And lastly, and this is connected with the trends as well, on the different thresholds that I explained, we have seen a trend since 2018 until today, actually two trends in terms of the cost of leads, so generating leads, and the compensation. First, and this is particularly exacerbated now with AI and generative AI out there, is that the cost per leads increased dramatically. And this was because a lot of different channels got saturated. So having outreach out there, or having sales lofts, by automating all these different emails that Gen AI is helping to create, we started to saturate all the different prospects that we could have. And also we started to accelerate how often we can get in touch with them, meaning that more and more people were just ignoring our efforts to get in touch with them. That means that every time we were having a positive response, we were paying a lot more money to get that lead. And on top of that, salaries as well, and this happened in particular after 2020, with the inflation, salaries went through the roof. And that's why also the compensation went through the roof, because we needed to compensate for inflation, and also for some, let's say, inflationary results that are not necessarily connected to inflation. In particular, for medium touch, this is the one in which we have SDRs. If you compare the salary of an SDR 15 years ago and the salary of an SDR today, and even adjusting for inflation, you'll see that those salaries have increased dramatically. That's why the biggest change that we saw in the different go-to-market motions was in the medium touch. On top of this medium touch being the weird middle child that has problems. Sometimes you don't know if you're actually a low touch or you should be a high touch. So this one tends to be also the one that has the most inefficiencies out there. So if you are operating in the range between 15 and 50K, you're probably having a lot of the challenges that I have been talking about today. Good. So before I pass the mic to Sari for her to share a few things with us, I just want to check in with everyone if there are any comments about these different revenue efficiencies, and if you already see the possibility of implementing this as well in your P&Ls running your organizations. Any comments, just jump into the chat. You can share with us. I'm very curious to know if you already are operating like this, or you have been thinking of operating something like this, which is giving you already very much clarity on how much. For instance, a way of thinking about revenue efficiency is, if I put $1 in to my go-to-market engine, how many dollars I'm going to get out? And by applying the go-to-market model, you pretty much are able to answer that question very straightforward as well. Because you can say, in my dedicated touch go-to-market motion, if I put $1 in, I will get $2 at the end of the year, at the end of the first year. And in lifetime value, I will get $5 or get $10, and so on and so forth as well. Okay, I see a question for Patrick. What solutions have you seen for those saturated channels and increased acquisition costs? That can give enough content for another workshop, Patrick. Short answer is, instead of doing more, because a lot of people just think Gen AI is just going to help me scale up at a cheaper cost, but they're just scaling up the wrong things. So instead of doing more better, do better, meaning that if you go back to your go-to-market engine and you know what's working for you, double down on that, and then stop doing what doesn't work. And for that, you need to be very clear on the processes that are working. So first thing, analyze the processes that you have, determine which processes are working for you, determine which processes are not working for you, stop doing the ones that don't work and double down on the ones that work, instead of just scaling up everything and spraying and praying. And in the process of getting aligned internally about 7 cost centers. Fantastic, I love that. Because indeed, it's not only the cost overall of the go-to-market organization, but also if you're able to do that per go-to-market motion, you're going to have already the advantage over your competition, because clarity of data always leads to better decisions as well. I see Tony, definitely helpful framework and thinking about how to present the cost benefit of the change of go-to-market motions in terms of numbers. So we'll need to dig a little bit more of, Tony, your particular scenario. But what you could say is 2 things. The first one is, by applying the model, you are already aligning your company with customer expectations, meaning that you're already aligning with where your customers want to buy from you. And then the second one is, if you have the right go-to-market motion, these thresholds are by design also implicitly going to help you with your margins. But obviously then you can calculate and make sure that you're paying the right salaries and the right compensation. But at least as a rule of thumb, if you're aligning your ACV with the way you're going to market, you already are controlling your costs as well. Good. So, Sari, giving the mic to you.
Sure thing. So just a couple of things as we wrap up. We always get the question, what now, or what next? What should I do? And so a few things here for different options for you based on what type of company you're at or what type of role you're at. So number one, feel free to share any of these insights that you learned from DG today on LinkedIn. We believe that the more companies and the more GTM leaders that are aware of these frameworks and can use them, then the better off their teams will be. So please feel free to share as much as you like. Did you mention that the recording is going to be sent out? That'll be sent out, within 24 hours of this call. So you can refresh your memory as needed. Second, we often are interacting with a lot of you who might be at small consulting companies or in fractional roles or working at RevOps platforms. If you're not aware already, we have a certified partner program for both RevOps platforms and for consulting partners. So please have a look at that. We're going to put these links in the chat and send them out in the recap email so that if that applies to you and you're interested, please check it out. We'd be happy to answer questions. And then third, we are releasing something brand new called Guided Pathways. I'm not going to get into that too much now, but I'll give you just a preview to say that it is a way that you can scalably take this framework and all of our other frameworks and content and bring it into your company at a scalable, efficient way, perhaps rather than, working on a long extended project with, a whole bunch of consulting services. It's another option that you can use to self-serve a little bit using all of our content and frameworks. So that's Guided Pathways. We're launching that on November 19th. So please join us for that if you want to learn more, if that sounds like something that will apply to you. So those are the 3 options of what can I do now. Any final questions from anyone for DG before we wrap up?
We have a couple of questions in the chat as well, so I can address those. I think it's going to be more than enough for the last few minutes that we have. So I see Matt, what's the most accurate way to assign costs at each stage of the sales cycle per account and deal? That's a very, very good question, in particular, because that's also aligned with what I was trying to say in this slide, which is based per go-to-market motion. One of the costs that is the hardest to assign is the lead generation one. Because in general, if you're operating by silos, as we spoke about in the beginning, marketing is going to be doing their own thing. Regardless of what sales and customer success are doing, marketing has a budget, and marketing is generating the leads that we're giving them to generate, or the pipeline that we're giving them to generate. The shift in this case is, if we have go-to-market motions, marketing should have a budget per go-to-market motion, meaning that if you have 3 go-to-market motions in this case, marketing is going to have, let's say, a certain amount of budget to generate pipeline or leads for no touch, then another budget for low touch, and another budget for medium touch. Having that budget and then seeing how many leads they are generating in each category, then you can assign that cost. You can say, every lead that I generated costs this amount. For instance, if the no touch budget is 1 million and you generated 1 million leads, so the cost of lead generation was $1. But if you have a total of 1 million budget and you generated certain amount in no touch, certain amount in low touch, certain amount in medium touch, it's going to be very hard for you to know where to assign that cost. So that's the first part. And then whenever we get to lead gen and cost of selling as well, if lead gen, for instance, lead dev, for instance, you have SDRs, but SDRs are only assigned to the go-to-market motion 2. So you know that their salaries and compensation is only going to be assigned to these go-to-market motions as well. So that's why I see this is very, very powerful if you're applying this go-to-market model, because it simplifies a lot all these different intricacies of calculating the cost per acquisition and the cost to serve as well. Good. And I see one last question from Tony, or actually comment, the enemy to change is in this case staying the same due to people being, oh yes, Tony. This tends to be one thing that we help our customers with a lot as well, which is change management. It tends to be one of the main reasons why you have all this inertia in the companies and changing the mentality of the people. The only thing, or the main thing that I tell my customers in this case when they facing these challenges is that if you are aiming in particular to re-accelerate your growth rate, the only way that you can do that is by changing habits. You cannot expect to re-accelerate a company or the growth rate by just putting processes in place. People need to change their habits, and that's where it starts. Good. With that said, I think that's everything I have for you guys today. As Sari said, we're going to be sharing the recording after this. You have my LinkedIn as well. Feel free to reach out to me if you have any more questions. I'm happy to continue the conversation offline. With that said, thank you very much, everyone. We appreciate your assistance today. Thank you very much.